Coach at West Ham, I had 3 good centre halves, and we primarily played 4-4-2 when I went in there all them years ago, and I got told to play a 3-5-2. And I think what's important is the players that I had there at the back was 2 players that went on to become centre halves. One of them was Anton Ferdinand, and the other one was Elliot Wald. And the other centre half that we had to accommodate was Ronnie Fletcher. So even though Ronnie never went on, that was the reason we played a back 3. And then we had players in this midfield here like Kieran Richardson, who went on to Man United. So really it was about trying to fit the players into a system. So just a little bit on the profiling of players, and I'll keep it brief because, again, I want to make it interactive. And if you've got questions, then I want you to ask them. So for me, when you play a back 3, I think it's really important that if you're going to play a back 3, they've got to be good at running with the ball. They need to bring the ball out. They need to have a variety of pass, long and short. And these back 3 are no longer centre halves that just head it and volley it. Although out of possession, we want them to head and volley. But for me, I always say that fullbacks in this 2 and 3 role are really important, because if you've played as a fullback, then you don't mind getting out into these wide areas. I think in the past, when some teams have played a back 3 and some people have talked about playing a back 3, I think there's this thing about they've got to stay close together when they're defending, and I'll talk about that. So for me, whether you're in possession or out of possession, fullbacks for me who are comfortable coming out into these wide areas, it's really important. So we need pace. The physical attributes of the modern game is to have pace. So in the midfield, and we talk about the wing backs, the 7 and 11, and for me these wing backs have got to be very energetic. They've got to have the ability to get up and down the pitch. And there were some important questions posed by a couple of people about the role of the wing back. So for me, again, you've got the modern fullback, and for me a modern fullback can get up and down the pitch. He or she needs to be athletic. But what also, for me, they've got to be really good at, and they've got to have a great engine. But again, once they get up the pitch, they've got to be able to deliver good crosses, or they've got to be able to play their way into the box. So it's really important that you identify. And I think some young sides, and I've been at a game today, find it hard, and they want to play 3-5-2 because they've seen it on the telly with Sheffield United, maybe. And for me, is they get exposed, so they'll get forward, but they won't get back, the younger players. So it's really important that you then, these guys know their roles. But for me, yeah, profiling, good energy. In the midfield, the central midfield, and I'll talk about the way that you can play in midfield, because I've just put them as a flat 3 to show you a 3-5-2. And for me, nothing's like that. It needs to morph. It needs to change whether you're in and out possession. But again, neat football players, good box-to-box players. Some of you might want to play 1 holding and 2 advanced, and other people might want to play a 2 and a 1 in there. And I'll talk about the different ways that you can play the system. But what I've done in there is just literally put 3 in there at the moment. But again, good energy, box to box, neat, tidy footballers who want to get forward and join, and again, get up and down the pitch to support the front 2. So the front 2 for me, years ago when most teams played a 4-4-2, they had a combination of a big and a little one. And, that can be beneficial if you're a more direct team. But we're finding more and more teams now are less in terms of profile, having big players. But like I said, if you want to play a certain style and go back to front quickly and be more direct, there's nothing wrong with having a big 9 and a 10 running in behind, etc., etc. So just profiling. We want players to be neat and tidy. A goalkeeper needs to have a range of pass. I watch academy football, and all they ever want to do is play out to these players, and they need to be able to hit these diags to the wing backs, or even hit these balls into the front 2, particularly in the modern game if we're going to play on the counter attack. So that's just a quick overview of players. So talking of the bigger picture, I'll talk about we've got our numbering system. I just want to talk about the advantages and disadvantages. So when you look at that board like that, and no one's going to be static, in possession, out of possession, things morph and change. But if you look at the obvious ones, and I always look to England playing in the World Cup when they played Croatia and got beat in the semi-final, it was very much played like that, almost with Henderson holding and Dele was in there, Dele Alli, and Lingard was in there. But if you look at the system, you're outnumbered in these wide areas. And I see a game today, and yeah, it's obvious for me that these are the danger areas. So how do you combat that? We'll, as we progress and we go through the slides, we'll let you know that. So for me, it's quite easy how you negate it. And we're talking about players knowing their roles. So, you know, and I'll talk about it more in depth. These central players have got to be prepared as it gets higher up the pitch, that they can go out and engage players in wide areas, okay? Because the full-backs or the wing-backs are not always going to get back. So if we've got a back three that are prepared to slide across, and like I said, full-backs are comfortable going into wide areas, where some old-fashioned centre-halves want to stay in the centre of pitch because they don't want to be exposed and get in races or get in 1v1s. Again, if you're organised, for me, that your midfield players might come out there. Yeah, and there's some very good examples of teams that do that and get out wide. So if these wing backs get caught out, then these middle three, however you play it, must be organised to get out in them wide areas. But for me, it's easier than that. And we missed a trick in the World Cup final because out of possession, I am going to start with in possession when we get onto the slides, but out of possession, for me, the front two have got to play wide apart. And I'll go through the detail in that. So, Mauricio, there's obvious advantages and disadvantages. We went through the disadvantages in the wide areas, but if you look centrally, we've got bodies in that central area. So, overall picture, and we're going to come on to the playing outside in a minute, but the strength, if you look, is in that core of the team. That central area has got bodies in. That doesn't mean because you've got bodies in there, you're going to score lots of goals. So, whatever system you play, I might play it different from someone else. It doesn't matter what I think. This is just my opinion. And you need to establish your rules. You need to have, and I call them rules, or I used to, your expectations of players' roles. It's about roles and responsibilities within that side. So I've just got a slide up on the pitch now, and a lot of people will play out a different way. And I showed you when Arsenal play out, and they don't play a 3-5-2, when they played a 3-4-3 or a 3-4-2-1, but primarily a 3-4-3. But if you look, most teams now would get these two players dropping in here. So I had a look at it, and I'm going, do I want to do that? Or do I want to, for me, yep, just... And my preferred system of playing a 3-5-2, and there's lots of different ways to play it, is I want to play a 1 and a 2. That might morph out of possession, but talking about in possession, and my rationale is, yeah, a lot of people will go and say, right, I'm going to play out like that. Yeah. And I'm saying, that's not my way. I'm going to get my one person on the ball is decent. So we've got more players in advance of the ball. If we're going to teach players to play out, we need players in advance of the ball. So when we get into these areas, we have targets. So I put on flat three in there. I don't want to play a flat three central midfield player. I'm a great believer that if we're going to play out and we go on this side slightly on the right, and you saw an example is, I'll need a bit of security, so my 6 is going to drop in now. And because I want to play 1 holding and 2 advanced, it's an attacking 3-5-2. It can change depending on the state of the game. But for me, if we've got central defenders that are good on the ball, I want the 3 central defenders to space out. I want to create space. I want to give problems to opposing sides. So whether they play a front two and they play a 4-2-3-1, it gives a problem to the wide players of the opponents. So if they played a 4-2-3-1, do we go half and half and push on these, or do we go in there and play safe and play out there? Again, if they decide to do sort of half and half, if you look at the back, there's going to be that sort of exposure down a central area. So for me, that's my thought process of why I'm going to do. I'm not too worried about the opposition, but I thought about the opposition in why I want to play like that. So I want to make the pitch big. I'm a great believer in that. Now, within your rules, and I call them rules, the roles and responsibilities of players up to you. You can, and a lot of people will play, when they play their midfield configuration, they'll play a 2 and a 1. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong, and that's how I used to play when we played it like that. But I thought, no, in the modern game now, because these back three are equipped with the ball, and I want to get players high up the pitch, I see it as very much an attacking formation or system. It can be negative, but that's managing the state of the game. So what I'm thinking of, when we get into these areas here, I'm assuming that we can get out. If he wants to come out, we've got a little bit of rotation in that our deep midfield player will sit in there. But I'm under, what I want to do is really occupy their 2 centre midfield players in there. And by having a front 2, what you must get is that. They're definitely going to do that. Okay? And I would imagine they're going to do that. So if we've got our 2 advanced central midfield players, yeah? So I'm not saying how the other team are going to play, but I'm surmising because of how we set up, they've got to look like something like that. Okay? So if we've got a front 2, we are going to occupy their 2 centre halves. If we have a high 2 midfield players, we're going to occupy them when we're in possession. So there, it's like I've showed you earlier on, how are they going to play against them? Where are you going to go? So the 7-11, are they going to push high on them? Which they might do. And they're not going to do that. If they want to do that, that just invites us out to go a little bit longer. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. So for me, probably playing against that is going to be, they're going to sort of try and get half and half. But for me, there's a lot of space to play out in here. Yeah, it gives them a problem. So in terms of playing out, I think you can get out a lot. And if you wanted to swap it over and go a 2 and a 1, I think that invites pressure onto you. So that's why I'm saying is be brave, be bold, and say these are our strengths. We're good enough to play out here. And for me, you just see that slide. So the next slide really is, I don't think we have any problem getting up the pitch. And it's about your rules and your responsibility. So for me, when you play this system, and I'm going to move it up the pitch, is obviously in terms of as we get up the pitch, primarily your back three have got to be able to defend. And I see Sheffield United, I never thought I'd see centre halves going on overlaps. That's what they do, and they've been quite successful. It's not for me. But what I want from my wing backs is, and a question was raised earlier on from John, he says, when he plays this system, invariably, and I quote, he finds it hard to get more than 3 or 4 players in advanced areas. So for me, if we're playing at 1 and 2, and I relate it to other systems, I want my 6 to be our security. I want him to be the best player on the pitch, him or her, comfortable in possession. They're going to work laterally. So if we sort of bring the ball out on this right side, he or she is going to be in this, and they probably will be on the inside of the ball. There's lots of sides that don't really give rules or roles and responsibilities. They just let them run around. But for me, if we're on the right side of the pitch, I want my wing back to look to be getting on beyond. So a lot of people say in possession, I want to play my front two close together. I want the advantages of playing a front two are if they play together, they occupy two central defenders. But if they play close together in possession, there's space in these wide areas created. So it gives a problem. If my 7 wants to stay high and they're not tracked by the fullback, then we'll play in there. But let's be fair, fullbacks are going to drop off and they're used to playing narrow and they don't want to get the ball behind them. So for me, if we get these wing backs in advanced positions, if you look, for me, yeah, at some stage their wide player is going to come and engage. So what I'm saying is, invariably the other team might play a 2 and a 1, and then we're matched up in midfield. But like I said, having 3 players who are comfortable, and this is why I'm saying if you play a back 3, if you have 3 centre halves in there, the higher up the pitch they go, the more, not all central defenders now, the less likely they are to be comfortable in possession. Where if you get fullbacks who are playing as an outside back in a 3, they're more likely to be comfortable as they get higher up the pitch. And again, my rules are, and I say rules, the rules and responsibilities are that whenever the ball is on the right side, wherever it is, that this nearest player will always be on the inside of the ball to link it up. That this 4, so the right-sided of the advanced central midfield players, is in advance of the ball. I don't want to get into areas where he's dropping in here or she's dropping in here. I want them to play in that almost like a 10 role. But it's really important that our front 2 pin the centre halves and play high up, particularly if we get advanced up and then we're looking to play our way into the box. Or if they drop off as we get higher up the pitch, then I would expect the second centre forward, the second striker, probably the biggest, to start pulling away, because we're then, if we want to play these diagonal balls into there, it's not a problem for me. But again, that's your preferred style. And if we do come direct and we come from the back, there's nothing wrong with, if you do play a front 2, that if we are a little bit desperate and we need to go longer, and there's nothing wrong with that, if you play up there, you've got people around the ball or people to get on if we help the ball on. So if we do go direct, whether we go on the diag, if we're deep, we're not going to probably reach the diag. But if we're deep and we want to play straighter balls up this side of the pitch, then obviously I'm looking for the nearest front player would come in there. And again, we've said about wing backs getting beyond for a little flick on. Again, and if it is deep, we can look for the front 2. So there's various combinations from deeper positions to say nearest striker shows, we've got to be direct, wing back gets on, second striker gets on. As that changes, as you get higher up the pitch, there's no space to play in behind. So therefore, if we get good possession higher up the pitch, we're more likely to go, right, second striker to pull away. But for me, and John says about he doesn't get his wing backs forward, wing backs must get forward. If you choose to play with wing backs, they can't sit in here and worry about being out of possession. And I'll come on to that transitional moment of the game. So if we advance on the right, my wing back knows he or she must get on the shoulder of the furthest fullback. My second striker must pull off the second centre half. Now, if we do that, we've got the proposition of long diags, okay? But as we get up the pitch, whilst the ball is on the right, the nearest central midfield player out the 3 must be in advance of the ball. So if you're clever and you try and play your way in, like we said, if you play 2 strikers, nearest one will show and try and link. If it goes in there, we've got a player to get in their eye line as the ball travels and combine. But I don't really want to get them in the way of the 9 because we can't play in there. So it's about being in advance of the ball and not coming behind it or square, being in advance of it, because we've got our security in our holding midfield player. But obviously if it goes wide, he links up. So there's a combination in this side of the field of play, okay, which we've done on all the other things. It's up to the furthest central midfield player to make them runs. So if the front two decided to play a part, he or she would do that. Yeah. If I'm the furthest central midfield player, I need to be getting beyond the front two. If the front two play together, then they have to recognise, if I'm the furthest central midfield player, that I go beyond. So nearest players support and link up. Furthest players away are your options. But your options depend on where the second striker. And when we talk about strikers, first and second, first is the nearest, second is the furthest. So if we get good possession and they're wide apart, he or she is doing that. If they play close together, these little combinations, yep, this player is looking to get beyond. So for me, I call them rules. I call them rules to myself now. They don't like the rules. They're the expectations of the players. It doesn't matter what I think about what you do. It's up to you as a coach to establish who does what. Okay? But for me, like Sheffield United do, if this player wants to go in and join, he or she can. And depending on the state of the game, if we needed to chase it, then that's not a problem. If he was disciplined, it was 1 or 2 up, I'd expect him to sit. But what we have got is the security of this guy. So if we need to chase it and we need to get, like Sheffield United do, players coming out from the back, and there's many central defenders that are capable for that. And like I said, particularly if they're a right fullback and they've converted to being a back three. Like I said, and if they do that, we've got the security. So it's not people just doing what they want. I hear people say, we're going to flood the midfield, we're going to do this and that. That's my thoughts on terms of in possession. So, yes, you need to work on your shape and pattern. Yes, you need to work on what their roles and responsibilities are. But first and foremost for me, you have to decide how that configuration is going to be in midfield. Because some teams play a flat 3 in there. Some people will play with a 2 and a 1. Yeah, and some people, not many, if you're brave enough, will play with a 1 and a 2. So in terms of in possession, I'm not going to go too much on that, because I want to talk more about the out of possession side of it, because the questions have been asked more about that. But if any of you guys now have got any questions around in possession, if you play a 2 and a 1, like I said, if you come out and you've got a 1 and a 2, for me, your priority in terms of your passing is to the highest players. Yeah, can you play into these 2 players? If you have a 2 and a 1, they sometimes get in the way and they bring others in there. So for me, if you play a 2 and a 1, they need to do that. And that's almost like your 10 coming into this pocket here. But you're trying to clear space. For me, it's easier to get it into advanced positions if you open this space up. So I'm not saying it's wrong to play a 2 and a 1, but don't do what everybody does in a modern game, because they think you've got a player to come in the way of the ball. So you'll bring a player in there who's playing there, and we can't get it in there. So it's about, if we play a 2 and a 1, can we take him away? If he doesn't come with us, great, we'll get it in there and pop it in. If they come with us, it clears that space. So whatever configuration you play in midfield, a 2 and a 1 or a 1 and a 2, it's up to you to talk about how you're going to create space to actually try and play into the advanced players. Anyone got any questions around in possession on what you might do, or what you want to ask in terms of wing backs? And the question I'm going to ask to give yourself time is, John Brandon asked, I have more difficult in getting 3 or 4 players. And John said, when attacking, he plays a 2 and a 1. And he's saying that his wing backs can't get forward on the opposite side. So I'm saying is, if I get into that advanced position in the way I'm playing, yeah, and we just put that on the board, the 11 must get to the far post. So if we're building up an attack on this side of the pitch, and there is a slide on it, and we'll come on, I think we showed it, is, for me, the near post needs to be attacked by, if you've got a front two, the nearest striker. The furthest striker, yeah, because he or she would have pulled away in your build-up, he or she, if we get into a wide area, if we know that the 9 or the first striker is going to get to the near, if we know the wing-back's going to attack the far, then that sort of second striker needs to be around that central to far post area. But also, because I said it's very attacking, whilst the player's on this side of the pitch, we need security. Yeah, we've got a player in advance, and we've got our furthest central midfield player. So for me, your back three would slide across. You might have had a combination between the right-sided central midfield player and the wing-back, and your security's on that side of the pitch. So if we were to lose it, we've got security on this side of the pitch. But in possession, what we're saying is wing-back attacks the far post, first striker attacks the near, second striker attacks that mid to far, maybe even central area, and your furthest central midfield is in there. So if you look at that, we're getting bodies in advance of the ball. So hopefully, John, that answers your questions. Anyone got any questions, guys? And this is your chance. If you want to ask a question, don't be frightened. That's only my thoughts on playing this and in possession. It doesn't matter what your views or thoughts are, and if they're different to mine, it doesn't make it wrong. And again, any system, someone say, oh, we play a 3-5-2, and they play it totally different. Anyone got a question? In possession, 3-5-2? If you want to ask it afterwards, guy, because you might be shy, you know, don't think you can't.
Colin, it's Steve from sunny Sussex.
Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. You're obviously okay. Not sure about the beard though. Look,
Today's unshaven. Go on.
Yeah, I've just posted a question there about, you mentioned earlier on the 6 dropping in.
Yeah.
So the question is the timing relevant to avoid dragging another defender in too early? And what about their body position? So should they be coming down the line and off the line if they can't receive, so they can open the curtain? So
right, yeah,
you know, a bit John Cartwright.
Good question. Yeah, so if they played a 4-2-3-1, someone's trying to ring me, but don't worry about that. Like you said, if I've got a central defender breaking out, and I know there's going to be 11 on there, and I'll just put it on this side. So that's what they're going to have in this sort of area. They're going to have something like that. So what we're saying is, if I break out and their wing back, their left winger in a 4-2-3-1, just so you can get the bigger picture, I think you need to be tactically astute. You're going to get something like that, yeah. I'll just put that in now. I'll focus on this side of the pitch. That's a 9. It should be a 6. Anyway, if this 11 wants to come in and engage, which will probably happen, for me, you know, you've got to be clever enough. You've got space in here created, and it could be as simple as playing it in there and bouncing it. Okay, but if he or she comes out and this 11's a bit reluctant, as we drive, like you say, open the curtains, just clear the space. By staying away, the 10's got a problem. If the 10 wants to stay in there, then our 2 can drive out and take that space, and then as he comes out, these will narrow off just in case for security. But if the 10 wants to come across and engage, then great, we'll do that all day long. And if he or she is our best player, the one that sits in front of the back 3, will get out. So for me, it's not about so many teams now, especially in academies, just want to get on the ball and come short, and they end up coming in, and all you can do, you receive it with your back to goal. And my rules are, if you receive it with your back to goal, you can't turn. You've got to go bounce it back. Again, about your body shape. If I come off in here and I can see this 10 coming across, great. When I open myself up and I get it, I can go forward, I can go out the other side. If I close my body shape, and it's hard to show me that, yeah, I'm not going to know. So first and foremost for me, it's the positioning of, not your body shape first, the position of where you are, and that needs to be on the inside of the ball. Yeah. And obviously, if you're opening yourself up, you'll know if he or she's going to go and do that and engage, of which I'll get the ball, or if I just take them away, then as soon as that happens there, then I'll just fill in, and there's a little bit of rotation. Does that answer your question, Steve?
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Colin.
You're not just saying that because it's true, is it?
No, it's just because it's true.
Good. Brilliant. Any others on the back three, whether it be a configuration in midfield of 1 and 2 or 2 and 1? If it was 2 and 1, again, everyone wants to come and get the ball. Well, you bring your man in there. So I don't want that. If you play a 2 and a 1, if it comes out this side, he or she's got to go further away, and this one does that. Yeah. So it's up to them what they do. We don't know what the opponents are going to do, but if we do that, they've got a problem. And if they want to do that again, so if we start to add a 4 in there and an 8, okay, yeah, they're only going to get one player in there playing against that one. It'd be a 4. Now, if I pull away, if we come in here, we've got that 3v2. So if they want to come and slide across, yeah, there's their 3 centre midfield players, and I'll drop off. Boom, we've got our out ball on this side of the pitch. Again, it's not rocket science. But what you have got to do, you have to work on this in training. You can't just be on the side shouting out, oh, God. And this clearing of space, opening the curtains, whatever you want to call it, is really important for me. And players need to be taught how to clear space and open up, because the modern game is all about getting on the ball midfield. And I watch it so many times in the Premier League where you've got 2 centre-halves or centre-halves get on the ball and someone comes and takes it off their toes. Why? And it was a pet hate that John Cartwright as well, and I've worked with John, is a pet hate. Why come and get the ball off someone when there's no pressure? You watch how many times it goes on in the Premier League. You watch how many times it goes on with England. So the more players you've got behind the ball or coming to get the ball, the less you've got in front of it. And we wonder why certain players, when Henderson played in here for England, he only ever went square. But now he's played in that more advanced in a 4-3-3. He gets it higher up, he plays forward. So for me, the advice with my players are, don't get on the ball just to get on the ball's sake. Break a line. So if you do come deep, you get it, but there's a line broke. If the other team drop off and want it deep, you just need to go up the pitch and break a line, because we'll end up keeping the ball and going square, 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 never going forward. And for me, young players need to understand how to clear space. Guys, any other questions? Because I want to move on to the out of possession if no one's got anything on in possession. Because for me, I spoke to somebody today and I said, why do you play a back 3? And they said, because I want to flood the midfield. And I didn't want to be rude. And I think, why do you want to flood the midfield? For me, if you play 4-3-3 and out of possession, you drop your 7 and 11, you've got 5 in midfield. Yeah, and you've only got 1 up top. So if you play 4-3-3 and you drop, just have a look at that. Not necessarily the right numbers, although I'm obsessed with the numbers. For me, if you did that, out of possession, you've got 5 in midfield. Yeah. So whether your configuration is a 2 and a 1, or a 1 and a 2, or a 2 and a 1, you've still got 5 in midfield. Okay. So when I come to this bit, and this is the bit for me, is a lot of teams say, oh, we like to play and flood the midfield, and I respect that. But I'm saying is, if you now, if we change it, and I'm going to come on, if you can put that defensive thing up for me, Mauricio, just look at this out of possession. So if you look, that was just a little bit on there, and this will be on YouTube. All these clips will go on YouTube as well. If you, for me, this is the real big thing, because people say, I play 3-5-2, and some people, like we said, will try and play a flat 3 in there, and some people want to play a 2 and a 1, and some people want to play a 1 and a 2. Not many want to do that, but I think that really tests the opposition. But for me, if you can move that slide on, Mauricio, that's the in possession one. If we get onto the basic shape of a 3-5-2, so if you put that slide number 9 out, number 9, Mauricio, please. That's just to show you 3-5-2. So if you look at that, and I don't know if you can see me, Mauricio, can they see me and the board? Because, like we said at the start, there's advantages and disadvantages. So out of possession, and I've got some diagrams up there. These are your vulnerable areas. And England, naively, and I'm sure if you asked Gareth Southgate now, change it. So when you had England, you had Sterling and Kane up front. You had Ashley Young here. You had the young lad who's out in Atletico Madrid, trying to think of his name, Trippier. And then you had the configuration in midfield was Henderson, Dele Alli, and Lingard. And at the back, you had Maguire. Who was the other? Let me just have a look quickly. All about preparation. Yeah, you had Maguire, you had Walker. Like we said, that centre-half who could play right back. And Stones in there. So we was vulnerable in these wide areas. And I'm going to come on to that a bit later on, because that's how we set up out of possession. So if you move on to the next slide, like we said, you are strong centrally if you play 3-5-2. Central. It has to morph when you're out of possession. So the next slide that you can probably see up is, if we stay like that, these are our vulnerable areas. Their fullbacks can get advanced. Yeah, there's space down the sides of our wide players. So what you need to do is that. So let's just move them a bit higher up the pitch. Yeah. So if you look at that, then vulnerable areas are less. So yeah, when you play a back three, if they push their 7 and their 11 on, then your wing backs have got to go with them. Yeah. Now, the vulnerable spaces now is in here. So if you put that next slide up, you must play your front two wide apart. Yeah, because we start to put the opponents on, and then we say playing out from the back. And I just want to do that in isolation. And for young coaches or novice coaches, what you need to be able to see is it in thirds of the pitch, is see what you're actually doing. So when England played them, and I don't want to be negative about England, that literally happened. So you was getting it out in wide areas, and we was being overloaded. And it was 2v1 in wide areas. Now, that's not so bad. If you played your front two wide apart, question is, are their fullbacks going to get forward? Where are you inviting them to play if it goes to a centre-half? You're inviting them to play in here. This is where we're strong. So if we talk about having a game plan, a strategy, tactics are you can play 3-5-2, you can be naive and let them play down the side of you and be outnumbered, particularly if you've got, no disrespect, Dele Alli and Lingard who don't want to go out into these wide areas. And as the game went on, we never got players getting out wide. So you either change how you play it, or you change the personnel that are going to be able to get out and engage in these wide areas. If you take it back again, look where you're strong, centrally. Stop it going out wide, or give them something to think about, and then say to the centre halves, where are you going to play now? Okay? So, what does that lead to? Yep. If you get them inside, that puts you, and that's what you're trying to do. So take the players off, and if you go back to that diagram, we're saying is front two wide apart, because you want to get it in here. Yeah, you don't want to get it wide. Yeah, I'll take them out. You don't want to get into wide areas and have an overload, particularly if you haven't coached your front three to slide across, or your midfield three to slide across. Yeah, and if you don't do that quickly, all of a sudden they play it and you're in that area. Particularly if you've got fullbacks, Maguire's side, who doesn't really want to go out there and get exposed. He's not the quickest. I think you see that in a game they highlighted when someone ran in here. But whereas on Walker's side, yeah, so if you look at where the goals came from in the World Cup semi-final, they started on our left, even though we had Ashley Young here and Maguire here. And particularly Dele Alli, and that's not having a go at him, we wasn't savvy in that. So, again, have a look back to the diagram. If we play our front two wide apart, that's where we're encouraging it. Now, Can you put that next diagram up, Mauricio? Number 12. So, no, that's it. Go back to the one you did. Just go back one. Good. So that's what we're showing you. If you do that and you drop your wing backs back, yeah, that's the vulnerable space. Obviously, all this is behind you, but you've got your wing backs in there and you've got these. So you're trying to encourage them to play in here. Now it's your 8, 6 and 4 that do the work. So moving on to the next slide would depend on what they play in terms of midfield. Okay. Now, what we've said here is, if you look at that diagram, I'll give you 2 minutes to absorb that diagram, is if the ball does come into these wide areas, it might get played in and bounced there. Yeah. You've got to deal with it one or two ways. And like we said, in England, because they played like that, the ball comes straight out. So England didn't negate and try and get it in there. It was played here. Now, there's two scenarios. If the ball does get into these areas, then it's obvious that your nearest central midfield has got to come across. So if your front unit gets beat, the midfield unit needs to go and engage. Yeah, so obvious. But it can be done different ways, because it might be that it's played in here. So if I was a wing back and I was playing against their wingers, well, hold on. What you'll find, particularly when teams play one up top, is 3 against 1. So there's 3 against 1 in here. We're heavily outnumbered here. So we've got to learn to make these more mobile, and we've got to make the front two more effective to make the play go where we want it to go. Well, we've got 3 central midfield players in there. We need to keep it in here. If it goes in there and gets bounced out, can we get across? Yeah. But again, it might be that as that ball comes in here, this player, yeah, so we get a little central midfield player bouncing it round the corner. Let's just say we don't go and engage him quick enough and it gets played out there. Then look at that. You've got 3 versus 1, 2 versus 1. So for me, it's so obvious that you go, if this central midfield player gets played around, yeah, we can't have him running 30 yards up the pitch and this person doing that and that person doing nothing. Then it's so obvious that you've got to get out there, block the line off, and this player's got to be ready to come across. Yeah. So in other words, you can't sit in the middle of the pitch and go, we're strong in there, we've got bodies. Yeah. You've got to make sure that, for me, the front two get the ball inside. If we can't get it in there and stop it and force them back, when it goes out there, we've either got to be sensible enough to go our midfield 3 slide across, yeah, or we do it another way where the wing back goes and engage. But there's a danger there that if it gets popped in there. But I'm saying is, if you play as a back 3 player, you've got to be prepared to go out into these wide areas and go and engage opponents' wingers. I think it's imperative. Take that phone off. So move on to the next slide, because this is really important now. That's a general thing on front 2 being wide apart, trying to get it inside. If you want to work on your front 3 midfield players sliding across because it's got outplayed out wide and we're defending wide areas, that's what they have to do. Or if you all want to be really brave and push these up here, it might be that you should try and stop it at a source. But if it gets played in behind the 5 in midfield, if you don't get your wing backs to drop deep, then you've got to be prepared for these 3 central players to come out wide areas. And that's why I said you're probably better off having a full back in a wide area. Right, so if you look on the slide on the pitch now, okay, you will see the opponents playing 4-3-3. So for me, you can do what you want to do in possession, your 3-5-2, whatever configuration. But for me, out of possession, it's really important, and we've set them up on this one in a 4-3-3 system. So if the other team played a 4-3-3 system, and we just said, oh, we got 3 in central midfield. Yeah. If you look at that, we've got 3v1 in this area. Brilliant. And as I said today, if you've got 3v1, often these 3 don't know who's marking. And in the end, you see the ball going to one person playing up top on their own because they don't really know. Whereas if you had 2 centre-halves and the ball's on this side of the pitch, the first centre-half who says, I'll go tight and try and nip it in front and the other one to cover. And when it's on the other side of the pitch, it'll be the opposite. That this one will probably go tight and try and win it, step in, and this one will cover. But when you get 3 playing against 1, for whatever reason, they think, oh, we've got 3, and they end up getting it in there. So for me, there's various ways to do it. But the most important thing is in midfield, again, front 2 need to split. Yeah. So where's their fullbacks? There. They might even go higher. So you've got a, theoretically, the 10's playing against the 5. The 9's playing against the 6. Because you're outnumbered in these wide areas, you've got to be really shrewd and really tactically astute. So I'm not even coming to the middle part yet. So if you play wide apart, you stop that goalkeeper playing a long diag, and then you encourage them to play in here. So if they want to go long and go into wide areas, it's not a problem because we've got to be prepared to get outside of the back 3 going out there. And if it does come in here, look, we've got an overload on them. 3 versus 2, if they want to come on this side. Yeah. And by the same token, if they want to go on the other side, yeah, this left-sided centre-half's got to come across. So you've got an advantage if the players are coached and if you do it in training. You can't just go out there and talk it. So if they want to go direct, happy days, because we've said at the start, these players have got to be prepared to go in wide areas. And what you're really doing with your own wing backs is sometimes they'll actually go with the opposition's wingers, but other times they might come and have to engage fullbacks, and that depends on the picture. But you've got to be really astute tactically to see that in a game. Now, if we go back to 4-3-3 and they play 4-2-3-1, even if they do that, but let's get the winger's eye. If they get the winger's eye, that means that we're going to have to go back here. Yeah. So by having the front 2 wide apart, hopefully we'll encourage them to play into the central defenders. Now, if we go to it and we sit them 3 in there against 2, it'll go in there, bounce out there, and we'll be in that scenario again. Yeah, it's all right. We can deal with it if we're coached and we know what we're doing. But for me, if they play a 1 and a 2, they're playing a 4-3-3, then we need to make sure that that happens. So if you look at the diagram now, pull that diagram back up, please, Mauricio, 12. Yeah. If you have a look at that diagram, number 12, that's what you've got. Yeah, we've got that in there. And our 9 and 10 have got to be prepared. Theoretically, they should be like that. Well, if they went and stood like that, it'd be out there, we're in trouble, we've got to slide across. So we've got to be smart, do that, and say, there's our vulnerable area. It's not a vulnerable area now if we put someone in there. It's vulnerable if we give it to them and we drop off. So we've got to make sure that when it goes in here, yeah, if he wants to be clever and pull away and drive out, because we know about driving out, well, he just blocks that, and then we're going to force them on this side of the pitch. And we'll start to do that. We know it's coming on this side of the pitch. We'll have an advantage then. So we've got to make sure that we're tactically astute, that we're bright, and just putting a system up doesn't mean systems don't win games, players do it. So they need to be coached. If you go on to the next, if you can show the next diagram, please, Mauricio, where the other team play a 4-2-3-1. Yeah, so most teams will play a 4-2-3-1. So again, we can't have 2 sets of 3v1. And if you look at that, what we've got to do is just do the opposite. We're going to number up in there. Yep, I'll put the 6 there, I'll put the 4 there as a screen. So if they go 4-2-3-1 with a 2 and a 1, again, the diagram shows, we've got an overload here. But if there is an overload here of two players, two of their players are free. If we go and mark them from the start, not good, the keeper will clip it in. Again, it's going back to having the front two doing that. This is one way of doing it. So for me, my strategy is to play the front two wide apart and get it inside. England didn't do that. England tried to, in the thing, mate, is do that, play narrow, force it wide, but what they didn't do is Lingard and Dele Alli never got out there. So they got forward. That was a golden opportunity. And if you saw what England did after that, they changed the system to 4-3-3. So on that day, we had Kane, Sterling. We had Lingard and Dele Alli, Henderson, Young, Trippier, and like I said, you had Walker, who was good at getting out, engaging that side, Stones and Maguire. And the goals originated from here, and then they were switched and they got in. So I'm sure if you see how England evolved and Gareth changed it, and when we played Croatia twice afterwards, we played 4-3-3 and we was a lot better because having three up top didn't allow them back four and their two fullbacks to get forward, like I said. But even if you do play that system, and I believe you can play a front two, but for me, you must play your front two wide apart and getting them into the area of the pitch where you're strong. Look at that. You know, oh yeah. You look at that central area there. If you draw a line in there, surely you look at that there. That's where you want your players. If you know your front two are going to play wide apart and get them in there. So tactically, again, lots of ways you can play it. And I'll just show you briefly before I open up questions. You can do it the other way. So if you want to go, right, they're going to do that and we're going to centrally. So now, this is where you've got to be, this is where you really need two walkers. You need quick players. Because if you look in there, they're all numbered up in there. You can play narrow. And if you're going to show it wide, you can't have a 2v1. What's got to happen is they've got to cheat. They've got to sit in front. Yeah, so when it goes out there, you've got to get your wing backs out to engage. But you've also got to be prepared for sometimes when they pop it in there, it goes round there to get these wide players. So if you look, we didn't do either. So for me, we had a trick loss where we could have got to the semi-final. No one would have been more disappointed than Gareth Southgate. And for me, if you keep the same system and your players are tired and can't go and get out there engaged, change the players so they're fresh and they can run. Or you do the opposite, you change the system, or you don't change the system, you change the tactic side and you play Sterling was on the right side and Kane was out, and then you just get them inside. So, guys, for me, come back to it, like I said, you can play in front two, wide apart, get them inside, and you have a strategy can be that you play narrow, you enforce the ball to go wide. When it goes wide, you make sure that your wing backs go and engage the fullbacks, but then you've got to make sure that your widest of your front three are ready to go out and engage. Now, Maguire doesn't want to get in situations where he's out there, okay? Whereas if we would have said we're going to get it on this side and we lopped it off a bit, you could lop it off there and do that. So you're basically saying to them, don't really want it go to your right, our left, because we maybe not got the personnel up here. If we offset it and make that easy to come this side, then we know that if it does get played round here and we don't get it, then you've got Walker getting out there and he's comfortable. That's only my interpretation. So, guys, just on the 3-5-2, it can be played many ways, and I've showed you the configuration in midfield. I've also showed you that you can force it inside, or you can force it outside. And it doesn't always go you want it to go, but the personnel in midfield must understand, is it me that goes out there, or is it, is it a midfield player that goes out there because the wing-backs have got beaten? Yeah, so I put them out of the game. If the wing-backs have got beaten, it's got to be the centre midfield. If they get beaten, then it's got to be the wide player. So if you've got any questions now on out of possession, it'd be really interesting to hear, because there are a lot of teams that are playing 3-5-2. If you want to challenge me on any of the things that we've talked about in terms of out of possession, defending against any system, but I've showed you the 4-3-3 and the 4-2-3-1, then feel free to ask the question.
Yes. Stephen?
Who's got questions? Stephen?
James? No, it's James.
James Lundy. Yes, please, sir.
Yes, I have to go soon, and thank you for all your insight. I'm with you with everything you've said, and out and in possession. The only place that I was a bit, I wouldn't say worried or concerned, is in out of possession in the midfield area. When you showed your slides, you had 3 players basically in a man-to-man. I'm not sure you were playing in that area, zonal, man-to-man, or mix. If the other team is trying to fix your midfield and trying to play around you, yeah, exactly on that slide. So yeah. I'm trying to know, what is your 6, 8, and 4 doing? Because they might try to draw those guys outside the area and use that space to attack.
Well, listen, we've got that one up now, that exact one. If the 4 and 8 is get them out of the way, if we try and get inside and they want to go deep, you go with them. No, I've got no concerns with that. You can go man for man in there, because if you want to go man for man and they want to take us into stupid positions, not that we do that, I haven't got a problem with that. And the reason that is, we've got security at the back. We've got 3v1. That's really important. So what I'm trying to say is, lots of teams will say, I've got 3 players in there, but the other team will go and get on the ball. And whilst you've got 3 and they've got 3, you've got to, for me, out of possession, you've got to go and match them. So if they go 2 and a 1, I think that's good, because like Arsenal, before this new managers come in, they all went deep to play out. They wasn't very good at it, and they lost it. So if they want 2 players to go in there, I'm happy to go man for man and go and nick it. And if we win it in a central area, high up, particularly when you've got a back 4 that's spread out, great. See you later, Adam. All the best, mate. But the biggest problem for me is if they went 1 and a 2, that gives you more of a problem. But I'll still say there, the one that drops off to get it for them is number 4. If he drops off to get it, it'll be our 10 higher. We got to go with him. We can't have him players on the ball saying, we've got extra players in here, because you invite them in. So I would go man for man, and you go with him. You've got a job to do. You've got a job to do. If they want to rotate and run about silly, then yeah, you're going to pass them over. But primarily for me, in midfield, you need to go man for man. And that's what I'm saying. You've got to be prepared to morph your system. So you might have had a 1 and a 2 that you start, or you might start 2 and a 1. Most teams play 2 and a 1. And this is what I don't understand. When the commentators watch the football, they go, they're both playing the same system, 4-2-3-1, and it matches up. When one team plays a 2 and a 1 and the other team plays 2, it doesn't match up. And you see expert pundits on the telly, ex-professionals, saying they're both playing the same system, it matches up. It doesn't match up. How does 2 and a 1 match up against 2 and a 1? It doesn't. Because they see it lined up. They don't actually see it. I don't know what they see. So we might play a 2 and a 1 if they're really good and go, I've worked with managers who said, we need to have an extra player in here in front of the back 4 or back 3. Why? You only need an extra player in here if you let them have an overload and get to you. If you're going to play out and the other team's going to play out like Arsenal used to, or try, match them up, and then there's going to be no reason for them to get out. And then you don't need 2 in here. But in this system, you have got a back 3 against 1. So hopefully that answers your question. But again, out of possession, you might play a 2 and a 1. If they play a 2 and a 1, you're going to invite them onto you, particularly if you show them inside there, they've got an extra body. So you need then to negate that and go, right, we're going to out of possession. And you see many teams change. Man City will play 4-3-3 in possession. And when they played the quarterfinal, the round before they got knocked out, well, no, it was the round before that, out of possession, that 4-3-3, when people call it a false 9, becomes a diamond in midfield because Man City play 4-3-3. So don't worry about the numbers. There's the 4, there's the 3, yeah, and there's their 3. So in possession, they'll play like that. Out of possession, they'll go like that, yeah, and there's your false 9, as people call it. They're just playing a diamond in midfield. So they have an in possession and an out of possession. Primarily it's a 4-3-3, but they just play the 2 wider players wider, and Jesus dropped in there and he gets on the ball. You get that overload. So systems do morph and change. So Manchester City have done that. And again, it has to morph and change when you play 3-5-2, depending what the other team's formation is. Any other questions around that anybody wants to sort of challenge or ask, or was unsure of something in terms of this?
Thank you. Thank you, Stephen. That's perfect.
Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yes, absolutely. That's perfect. Thank you.
Brilliant. So, guys, any more questions? Because I'm aware of the time. If you want to stay and chat after we've changed it, let me just say this before I go. It's my interpretation. This, you can play it different. Teams do play it different. It's how I would play it. It's not my preferred style. But again, I'll be putting every system out there to say, this is what I would do in possession. This is what I do out of possession. It's really important if you're a coach that you don't just say, there's the system, go and play. They actually know their roles and responsibilities. What are you expecting from me? Am I the holder? When it's on my side, do I link it? Do I get forward? If I'm the wing back, do I track back with my winger? Or do I pass him over to the player that's playing on the back? And that changes. It's not just hard and fast. It changes on the situation. And that's really important as a coach, that you cover every eventuality. And the biggest problem I find is not many coaches are confident at actually coaching the system they want to play. They just say, we play that and we get bodies forward, or we got lots behind the ball. It's all right assuming that, but players need to be coached. Do you want me showing it inside? Do you want me showing it outside? Do I go to the ball? Do I drop off? And all them eventualities happen on the pitch. If they rotate, do you want me to pass them over? Do you want me to stay with them? And they're things that I can't tell you. You know your players better than me. Whatever your system you play, systems do not win games. Players win games. But if your players are not coached, and they just run around and do their own thing, don't expect it to go how you want it to go. And again, from the opposition, if they mix their system up, you may have to change what you do in order to make sure that you negate whatever they're doing. Last
Colin.
Yes.
Colin, hi. This is Gokul from India.
Yes. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. I hope you're well.
Yeah, I'm well, thank you.
I just had a question on the wing back and the centre back, closing down the number 11.
Yeah.
The situation which you had mentioned. So yeah. Let's say the wing back goes up and covers the number 11.
Yeah.
And the centre back also moves up.
Yeah.
So does a midfielder drop back to support our defense?
Well, again, that's for me. If you play a 1 and a 2, if they go 2 and a 1, yeah. So it's about the opponents. If the opponents have got 2 and a 1, then he's going to be naturally in there anyway. Okay?
Yeah.
This is all about this. So I've just put that facing that way. If the ball's coming in, let's get him out of the way. So let's just say he's gone and the front player's got in there, it's got bounced out. If the ball's on its way and we can get up his jacksie and tight and prevent him turning, there's no need for the 2 to come over here. He can stay central.
Exactly.
But if he turns or she turns and faces us up and we can't get pressure on the ball, yeah, then we've got to be ready to get out and engage and get out there and cover our wing back. Again, if we force it inside, because we don't want to get exposed and beat outside, if we get beat outside, then we've all got to shift and this player's got to come across. So for me, we need to show it inside. And particularly if we've got one holding midfield player and a 2. Yeah? Now, if it was the other way around, where they've got a 1 and a 2, then I would expect it's going to be easier for them to get the ball in this situation. If they have a 1 and a 2, it'd be easier to get it here. It'd be a lot more difficult with a 2 and a 1. But, again, you want to force it inside because we've got bodies in there. Look, we're strong. Where you've got to be careful is if wing backs go to sleep on the opposite side, yeah, and you don't get pressure on the ball and you get done with that long diag, yeah. But again, if there's no pressure on the ball, this furthest centre back should be educated on. I don't want to overcover because 3 players you can throw a handkerchief over them. You need to understand that, you know, good body shape, see where the ball's coming from. But this furthest centre back, depending on what side the ball is, must be aware of the opponent's winger.
Yes.
Yeah, because they won't always get there. Our wing backs can't literally do that.
Yeah.
So it's up to this person then. If that got done on the long diag, I'd be questioning him or her and saying, you know, that's too easy. And that's for me to coach them on that.
Okay.
That help?
Yeah. Got it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Good man. Thank you. Thanks for joining us anyway. Any more questions? I'll have 2 or 3 more questions, guys, before I close it up. So, anyone got any questions in possession, out of possession, in terms of?
I got one here, Colin. When would you say that back 3 are vulnerable out of possession? Because at the moment it's always a 3v1.
Yeah,
they seem
they're
comfortable.
going to be vulnerable.
When are they going to get uncomfortable?
They're going to get uncomfortable when we don't get any pressure in here and there's no pressure on the ball, and there's going to be situations where, particularly for me, when the ball goes into wide areas, let's give you the wide areas first, where if we're betwixt and between where we don't get any pressure from our front 2, yeah, for me, and the wing back thinks, do I go and engage the ball? Now, if he doesn't go and engage the ball, it can be in and pop round. We're vulnerable there. If they're so from a deeper position and a wider position, if we don't get pressure on the ball, my advice would be to drop off. But we then become vulnerable if we let them go high up the pitch to that long diagonal to that opposite side. So there's vulnerability from deep positions if we don't get up where we can get a 2v1 in a wide area and overloaded. It can be vulnerable where we let them come up there and we don't get engaged and we're vulnerable to that long diag. Yep. So they're from wide areas. In central areas, which happens a lot, we don't get no pressure on the ball. And we've done that, and our wing backs in that, as you know, when you play against the back 3, they'll always say to you, can you get into these areas here? And if it's in a central area, the danger is they can go both sides. And for me, it's imperative. If we've got 3-5-2, therefore we should have 3 players in central midfield. I would expect that they couldn't play these. But you can never say never, and you can never stop that. There'll always be times that happens. Then you've got to be prepared. Like I said, if you've got pacey players in these wide areas and you want your wing backs forward, you are going to be susceptible to being counter-attacked or turned round in these wide areas. And for me, it's important that these are drilled, are organised in terms of, and you're not going to stop it every time, but again, it's percentages. If we can stop pressure in the centre of area and force it wide, great. But for me, if we can force it centrally, if the ball's in the middle part, we need to get pressure on the ball and we need to get in people's faces. And too many times we go, well, we've got numbers in there, but the numbers don't actually do anything. So it's really imperative that I was going to nearly swear then, but I wouldn't swear. I pride myself on that. But we need to get in people's faces. We need to get about them. We need to get a glove on them. We need to get in contact with them. So And again, it's understanding if there's no pressure, we've got to learn to be dropping off and spacing off. So as we're doing that, we're going to be vulnerable in them wide areas. If we stay narrow, we'll encourage that. But again, it's better than having that where they just get inside of us and play through us. Hope that helps. RM.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry, it's Robert. It's Robert.
Robert.
Yeah.
So hope that answers your questions. Guys, we've still got 32 on here, so I'm prepared for another couple of questions.
Yeah,
Anyone
Colin, we got one question from Tom. He's asking,
From where?
does the striker being wide out of possession encourage the opposition centre backs or centre halves to attack in central areas?
Yes, it does, and that's what we want. So, like I said, exactly, that's your vulnerable area. So once the centre halves have negated that wide area and making it coming through, so let's just say they play a 2 and a 1. And I'll just put any numbers in there. That would be even better. This is what I'm saying about lack of understanding in the game. If they have 2 and a 1, and we block off the wide areas and we encourage them to come inside, once they come inside, we're going to try and just put a little bit of pressure from the wide areas. You know, I'm not just going to let them run there. We're going to start to do that. But if they've got a 2 and a 1, that's good, because now this person can step in here and try and win it. Yeah. The biggest problem is when they have a 1 in there and a 2, because we should be then 1 and 2 in midfield. And when he steps away, yeah, and this is our midfield 3. Once they step away, that's a problem. But then for me, is you block your player off you're playing against, and then you go and press it. Yeah. So for me, yeah, we want them to. If you can get centre halves to run the ball out, and they've got that space, let them do that, because they could get out 10, 15 times. The one time you nick it and you go in there, you score a goal. And it's about, we can dictate the game out of possession. So you don't need, you can win the game. It's not possession that wins a game. It's what you do with that possession. So invariably, central defenders are not the most comfortable in the ball. The ones that play at the top level are, but the others are likely to hit long diags and play into your hands. So that's what I'm saying is, I would rather have the centre halves in possession of the ball who have made the pitch big, left a lot of space in there, than play narrow, pop it wide to fullbacks. Modern fullbacks do get forward. They do get up the pitch. Where centre halves are like, well, I don't want that. They're looking for someone to say, come and take the ball off me, most of them. That's why we need to coach our centre halves to be comfortable in possession, to be able to drive, to take the space, and stop getting central midfield players come and take it off the toes. And that's why my game is based on, the strategy is play the front 2 wide apart, encourage them to come out. If they want to come out, go and engage them in that central area. You nick it once off them early, or there's a danger, they ain't going to do it again, for me. Does that help answer that question, Mauricio?
Yeah, that one is perfect. We got another question from Kes. How will you position your strikers if you defend deep in the 1-3-5-2? Will you still ask them to protect the hard spaces, or ask them to pull wider into wide midfield positions?
I would in a 3-5-2. I wouldn't drop deep. I would play, if I play 4-3-3 and I had 3 quick players up front, I might drop deep. Now I'm not saying you're going to press all the time, but you're not really pressing. It's almost like a mid block when you play a 3-5-2, because they're going to push their 2 wide players on. It's almost like a mid block. So I'm not going to drop deep and play with a deep block and sit back in here. I'm not going to encourage them to get full-backs out the pitch where they can get in areas where they can hit long diagonals and have a fight ball and get the knockdown and the bits and pieces. I am saying is, if you play 3-5-2, for me, you're setting your stall out to win it high up or win it in a mid-block. You're not going to drop, for me, personally, and drop in there, encourage their full-backs to get forward, and then hit long diagonals and have scraps in there. Not for me. But, you know, if you're prepared to do that, the fact is some people might do that because they say, I've got big 3 centre halves in there. And that might be a strategy where you say, I've got 3 centre halves that are not quick. They can't go out and engage people in wide areas, so we'll let them cross it and win it. But that's not for me. but it is another way of doing it. So I can understand if someone wanted to do that. Hopefully that answers your question. Last two questions, guys. Anyone got any questions on the 3-5-2? Again, there's not a hard, fast way of how you play them three. They need to have an understanding of it might be a 1 and 2 sometimes. It might be a 2 and a 1. It might be that one of the three has to go out and engage a fullback that gets beat. And it's definitely going to happen sometimes where players at the back wide will need to go out and get into wide areas and cover for the wing backs, because a wing back literally can't cross it and get back and defend. However, if the profiling is they get up and down the pitch, are we ever going to have these two players go and do defending? Because I know what I'd be saying as a wing back if this bum wants to sit in the middle of the pitch. No, you've got to get your backside out into these wide areas, because too many times you've got 3v1. Yeah. So for me, this is not my preferred system. But if I was playing it, these need to know their roles. These need to know their roles. They need to know they're playing a part. They need to know when to go and engage the fullbacks, and they need to know when to drop off and go with the opponent's wingers. And that's all down to interpretation. It's all down to knowledge and understanding. And then it's able to communicate that to your players, not just vocally and verbally, but you must do it practically and work on it in your sessions. And you must, of course, set up your sessions to replicate the opponents and how they're going to play, and not just replicate their system, exactly replicate, do they hit long diagonals? Do they drive out from the back? So it's not just setting my team up, it's having an understanding of setting up the opponents, how they're going to play in the same system, but not just setting up the system, setting up the scenarios in which the other team, and that's why you have analysts in the game to say, this is how they predominantly score their goals, this is how they defend, this is where they're vulnerable. So the whole game has evolved, and we have to be so more tactically aware than what we are. And we're getting that way through the influx of foreign coaches. We are becoming, over the years, we've become more tactically astute. Like I said, going back to England, you know, Gareth will be the most disappointed person in the world, and he's certainly learnt from that, and he's pushed on, and he changed the formation to play 4-3-3. And in that 4-3-3, he has Sterling on one side and Rashford on the other side afterwards, and they're prepared to run back towards their goal because they are playing against the opponent's fullbacks. So if the opponent's fullbacks get forward, you didn't see Sterling or Kane track back, and for me, we missed Lingard and Dele Alli getting out wide, so Ashley Young was exposed, and the lad that scored the free kick, Trippier, was exposed. But it's not so bad Trippier being exposed because he's got Walker, whereas on this side, Maguire doesn't want to get dragged out. And I've said it again, but yeah, I think we've learned a lot from that, and we've changed the system. And if the system's not working, you either change the system, or if you believe in the system, then you need to change the personnel to freshen it up. But again, no touch to blame. England done fantastic in the World Cup. They exceeded expectations, knocking in 6 or 7 goals in one game, winning the penalty shootout. But the biggest disappointment in hindsight is playing against a team that played, I think they played twice extra time and played 120 minutes, and we had an extra day's rest, that we didn't take advantage of being 1-0 up and only having 20 minutes left to play. So chance missed, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. I'm sure if we played them again like we did twice after in the Nations League, I think we beat them and draw with them, or we might have beaten both. It wasn't because of the change of system, but we did change the system. It's what the players did on the pitch. And I think, again, the lessons for whatever system you play, systems don't win games. It's, do players know their roles, and are they able to morph and change? Or in possession, it might look like one thing, but in another possession, in out possession, it might morph into something else. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up now. Thanks very much for listening to the presentation. This will go out on YouTube. Any questions you've got my email. This is how you can contact me. It's on the screen now. I've got an email address. We're on Facebook, and it's you've got Facebook. It's Colin Reid football coach on there you need to get onto. But like I said, any presentations you want, I think the next one I'm going to deliver will probably be around the diamond, 4-4-2 diamond midfield, and talk about how it can morph into the 4-3-3. And we said about Manchester City, maybe out of possession, it goes 4-3-3. And you see how they got their goals by pressing high to get through in the Champions League. And then out of possession, it drops to that almost diamond, 4-1-2-1-2, where Jesus would drop into that false 9 role, and the front two will stay wide and occupy and try and get in them wider areas, to prevent occupy fullbacks as well, and really prevent centre backs going engaging into someone playing in that hole. So yeah, anything you want. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And again, I'll put probably something on in 2 or 3 weeks, and hopefully you've enjoyed tonight's presentation. Thanks very much, guys. All the best. Cheers. Bye.